Browns versus Titans. Browns and Titans both come in at 8-3. The Browns have won 4 out of 5. Titans have won 3 out of 4. Browns, in those 4 games, in those last 5 games that they've played, they've won 4. A lot of those games have been in ugly conditions. They've been in Cleveland. They've been in Ohio. They've been in rough conditions. I know a couple of other games have been delayed because of the weather. So if you look at the Browns, that kind of favors them because they are a running team. So Mayfield hasn't done so much in these last few weeks. He hasn't been asked to do that much. Honestly, he could have done more, in my opinion, during these wins. And that's one of the main reasons people are not believing the Browns. But they do come into this week winning 4 out of 5 games. The Titans, on the other hand, have won 3 out of 4. They just beat the Colts. They reclaimed the top of the AFC South. And they're looking pretty good. They're running Derrick Henry again. He looks like a monster. Derrick Henry is one of those running backs that gets stronger as the season goes on. He's a monster. He's built like a truck. He's built like a linebacker. He could run. He could gash you for the big play. He could wear you down. He's a monster. That's all you need to know. The Titans are 6-point favorites. By Vegas, 6-point favorites are the Titans. I think that's fair. The Titans have more impressive wins this season. They've beaten the Colts. They've beaten the Bills. They almost came back against the Steelers, and the Steelers beat the Browns, destroyed them. The Browns haven't really beaten anybody. The only team they've beaten is the Colts. Other than that, all their teams that they've played have losing record. So we're gonna find out if the Browns are for reals. This is one of their tougher matchups this year. And after the Titans, honestly, they don't have that hard of a schedule. But this game is gonna feature the two best rushing attacks in the NFL, number 1 and number 2. Number 1 being the Browns, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, 2 elite running backs. That's an elite one too. The only reason this is possible is because Hunt had some off-the-field issues that I'm sure most of you guys know. He had some off-the-field issues. He got cut by the Chiefs, and the Browns were able to get him off the streets relatively cheap. And honestly, he could be a starter in a lot of NFL teams. Nick Chubb, he's top 5 running back in the league. He's kind of underrated. I feel like people know about Kamara, people know about Henry, people know about Cook, people know about all these Elliott. Nick Chubb is a monster. He's a beast. And no one needs to mention Derrick Henry. He might be the best running back in the NFL today. He is a beast. He's a monster. He will run over you. He will outrun you. He will stiff arm you to the ground, just as Josh Norman. So number 1 rushing offense against the number 2 rushing offense is going to be an old-fashioned battle. It's going to be one in the trenches. Whoever is able to establish that run the most should be able to dictate the outcome of this game. The Browns will be without their number 1 cornerback, Denzel Ward. This is the second week he misses. I think that's going to hurt the Browns a lot just because the Titans do like to set up the play action. Once they get Henry going, they like to get the play action. They have Juno Smith as their tight end. They have A.J. Brown. They could hurt you through the passing game. A.J. Brown has a touchdown in each of the last 2 games. He's building momentum. He had a little slump in the middle of the season, but now he's picking back up. Namely, Tannehill had a little slump too, but now he's picking back up too. And now that Tannehill's playing good again, you see the Titans are able to turn their game around, winning 3 out of their last 4. So I think the Titans will be able to attack the Browns through the passing game, especially with Denzel Ward being out. Denzel Ward is a pretty good cornerback. He's a younger cornerback. The Browns will definitely miss him. On the other side of the field, will the Browns be able to expose the Titans' horrible pass defense? The Titans do have the 28th ranked pass defense. They've been atrocious through the pass. They kind of kickstarted Rivers this season a little bit. 2 weeks ago, people were on the fence about Rivers, and then he had a 300-yard game, 3-touchdown game against them, and then people were like, okay, you know what? Maybe Rivers isn't so bad after all. And then he played pretty good against the Packers, and they were like, all right. And then they were able to contain him pretty good last week in their second matchup against Rivers. So maybe the Titans' pass defense is turning around, kind of like the Seahawks' defense is kind of turning around. The Titans haven't made that big of a leap yet, but they might be turning it around. But they're still ranked 28th as their pass defense. Fortunately for them, the Browns have the 30th ranked passing offense. They do have the number 1 rushing offense, but they do have the 30th pass offense. A lot of that has to do with Baker Mayfield. A lot of that has to do with OBJ being out. A lot of that has to do with the terrible conditions that the Browns have been playing the last few weeks. So it hasn't been ideal conditions to throw the ball. The weather has dictated a running approach, and they've been up. They've been winning games. So if it's been working, like, why would you put the extra pressure on Baker Mayfield, especially when we know that he's susceptible to throwing a pick or two if you allow him to throw the ball 25 plus times. So that may have something to do with it. Will the Browns be able to expose the Titans' 28th pass defense, 28th ranked pass defense? I don't think so. I think Baker Mayfield is kind of limited. He's not terrible. He's not horrible. I'm not one of those people that think Baker Mayfield is horrible. I don't think he's terrible. I think he's a decent quality starting quarterback. As far as the Browns are concerned, he's their savior just because I don't think I have to remind anyone the long list of quarterbacks that the Browns have had over the last 20 years since they've been back in Cleveland. No one needs that reminder. We all know the terrible quarterbacks they've gone through. So for them to have Baker Mayfield, it's better than everything else they've had. And he's pretty good. He's decent. He could have his games. He had that almost perfect game after starting with the interception versus the Bengals. So we know he has a pretty high ceiling when he's on, but his average, his medium is pretty above average. Let's just call it above average. Don't want to say mediocre because he's not mediocre. He's better than mediocre, but he's above average. So, like I said, the Browns have only beaten one winning team this season. It's the Colts. And I just feel like I trust Tannehill more than Baker Mayfield. Even with Myles Garret coming back, he is expected to play this game. He was dealing with COVID. He said COVID had kicked his ass. He said he had body chills and he had like a fever and he had a lot of stuff. So it's good for the Browns to have Myles Garret back. One of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. It's definitely going to add pressure to Tannehill. But I trust Derrick Henry more than the combination of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. And I trust Tannehill more than I trust Baker Mayfield. So for that reason, I have the Titans winning 28-19. 28-19 is my prediction. Titans 28, Browns 19. Book it.